Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's episode of Trending, brought to you with Iconic Coffee. Head over to shop.iconic.com and use the code TRENDING, and you get 10% off. I'm joined by Richard Willett. How are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. Thank you. It's good to be back this week.
It's nice to see your face. Opening story coming from you today. We're going all the way over to the Maldives, which would be probably quite nice this time of year.
It looks beautiful. There's a perfect Y, if you look at the picture here, shaved into it. I don't know why that is. I don't think shaved is the right word either. Maldives bans Israelis from entering country and protest against Gaza's ongoing genocide. The ban was done in resolute solidarity with Palestinians and also applies to dual citizens. The Maldives has banned Israelis from entering the country in protest against Israelis' war on Gaza. It's not much of a war, is it? And in resolute solidarity with the Palestinian people. President Mohamed Mizzou signed the legislation on Monday after it was passed by the People's Majlis, the Maldives Parliament. Now, I don't know what you think of this, mate. I mean, I understand it, and in a way, I agree with it. But then in a way, I really don't agree with it because it just plays into the hands of, you know, those in the IDF can play the victim card, and we're banned from here and we're banned from there, and we get chucked out of every country without actually considering why. But also you're banning an entire people for the sake of... I find that difficult. What do your take on that? I find it like you're again grouping people together, which is only going to really... doesn't really do anything. You know, if the ones that will want to get in, the Mossad or these intelligence agencies, will be on foreign passports anyway. So what does it... I get it. I just don't think it's quite on the money.
No, I'm the same as you, mate. I mean, this is the Maldives government that... Didn't they carry out a meeting underwater because climate change or something, despite the fact that sea levels have not done anything. I'm the same as you, mate. I don't like. I can understand trying to do something in solidarity with people that are essentially being massacred. I get that, of course, but it's also punishing people that didn't necessarily do it, and I don't agree with that. So if they'd have implemented a ban where basically saying if you served in the IDF in Gaza in the last, 3 years or whatever, carrying out atrocities against the Palestinian people, then there's a ban. Well, that might be a slightly different conversation, because you're sort of punishing someone for doing something, or at least being involved in something. But just because you're Israeli, being banned from a country, I don't agree with that at all, actually, because you're banning someone based on the nation they were born into, of which they have absolutely no control over. I was born in Leamington Spa, Warwickshire. I could have quite easily been born in Netanya, Israel. I would have had no control over that. Well, maybe I did from the spirit realm. I don't know, but I can't remember. But you get my point. So it's actually, I don't really like that at all. Now, the question you ask is what happens to the Maldives now? Because when historically a nation either speaks out or bans arms sales or whatever against Israel, it doesn't tend to work out too great for them long term. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on the Maldives now, whether, suddenly the Maldives has some terror problems, or whether the Maldives, comes under sanctions from say the United States, which is of course Israel's lapdog. That's something to watch. But I agree with you, Rich. I'll be honest. I don't agree with banning someone based on the nation they were born in, as opposed to the actions or the characteristics that they've are part of themselves. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of it, mate.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me in the long term. You don't want them to do that to you, so why would you do that to them? It makes no sense. And what you said was a good idea about the IDF. If you served in the IDF, it's really important, as you say, to the last couple of years, because I believe that they all get drafted into the IDF for a certain amount of time anyway. So like that's blanket as well. But in the last couple of years, including what's happening here, I think that would have made for sense. You've got specific that way. You're in the military part of this, but hundreds of thousands of people are lining the streets of Israel to get rid of Netanyahu. We know that. We know that they're against what he's doing, and he's only, and his government are only bringing punishment upon the of Israel. I think to do with this, and therefore this is just adding to it. So it doesn't make sense. The gesture does. The execution, probably not the best term I could have come up with. No. It doesn't.
No. But like I say, we'll see where it goes. See where that one goes. Okay, moving on then. This one's, I want to laugh, but then I don't want to laugh because this is the country I live in. But we spoke a few weeks ago now. We were talking about the Drax power station in the United Kingdom, which is apparently it burns wood essentially. So it's, well, wood pellets. So it's essentially this eco-friendly power station that's been built basically on the bones of what was a coal-powered power station previously. And then it transpired that actually it's not what they say it is. They're not using wood pellets from discarded lost wood. They're actually chopping down forests in Canada and then importing this wood in, which is, creating carbon dioxide, so they can burn it. Like, the whole thing's ridiculous. So to add to that, obviously the final sort of coal-powered steel factory in Scunthorpe in the north of England is basically close to collapsing. It's Chinese owned, or at least it was, which to me is extraordinary. Anyway, what China's doing owning a steel plant in Scunthorpe is beyond me, but there you go. So it's essentially been taken over now by the UK government, and they're trying to basically keep the furnaces alight, despite the fact that through their various guises, Tory Labour, they've destroyed the steel industry going all the way back into the 1970s when they joined the EU, and it was decided without any input from any of us that Britain was going to become a service industry nation as opposed to an industrial nation, and obviously lots of people lost their livelihoods as a result of that decision that had nothing to do with them. Anyway, the UK government, this is from Lember Opik, who is a former Liberal Democrat MP and, in my experience, a thoroughly nice bloke. The UK government is importing coal 12,000 miles from Australia to keep British Steel's furnaces going, but the closest mine is 18 miles from Scunthorpe, but it was closed due to carbon taxes. Idiotic green policies make Britain the energy laughing shock of the world. They do make us a laughing stock, and we pay the highest energy bills on the planet. It is a joke. Now, Rich, I've seen a few people trying to come back from this and argue, basically saying that, because bear in mind, actually, we're importing from Japan as well, which is even further away. They're arguing that, well, actually, the coal here in the United Kingdom, in this particular coal mine that was, just up the road, the sulfur levels are too high. So actually, we couldn't use that anyway to make steel. Now, there is some truth in that, but there's also a shed load of other coal mines that have been closed in recent years across the United Kingdom with much lower seams, which have basically hardly any sulfur content of that coal. So the argument Lempic's making still stands. Even if maybe you have to drive 118 miles to get the coal, it's still not 18,000 or 12,000 if you're going to Australia. Where I live and where we are, to be fair, in Derbyshire, we are just sat on coal. Whole of Nottinghamshire, Lincolnshire, Leicestershire. It's a giant coal seam, which it made Britain a wealthy country. It launched the Industrial Revolution. There was obviously the water power from the Derwent, but also the ability to burn coal to power factories. It's what put Britain on the stage. And basically, since the 1950s, we've pretty much destroyed ourselves. People talk about Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s closing down all the coal mines and the steelworks in places like Sheffield and stuff like that, which is true. But actually, a large portion of these collieries were closed in the 1960s by the Labour Party. So it goes to show, do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter what party gets in. I can't help but think as well, though, Rich, an element of this is just trolling. Like, it's demoralising. It's taking the mickey out of us, mate. I swear it.
Yeah, I think it's many, many levels. And one thing we haven't discussed there is why they need to move things around the world. I think they call it trafficking in some elements of society. There are other things that are going along with this coal in my opinion, in these trailers, in these tankers, in these boats, in these aircrafts. They are trafficking other things. So I think that's something that hasn't been really thought about, is that what's going along with this? Why does the movement of things need to keep happening? So they find an excuse to bring things over that seems absolutely absurd, as you say. It doesn't make any sense. but what's coming along with it? And I think that's something that most people, I haven't heard anyone speaking about, is that actually there's something else in these cargoes that's coming along with this: arms, drugs, children, people. That what else did they make the world? Unfortunately, that's something we need to look into, and maybe I'm wrong, but there is a world of trafficking goods around, and they see these as goods, including the people around the world. And how does that happen? That goes along with cargo, goes along with oil, that goes along with other things in these ships. So there might be another reason why they're doing something totally backwards, really, because it makes no sense. I saw someone comment saying, well, you can grow trees back, you can't grow back coal. I don't know how long it takes to grow a tree, but I'm sure that's not going to happen overnight. That's illogical as well. So I think there's something else going on. Maybe, call me a conspiracy theorist. I think that there's a reason why this whole trafficking movement will never stop, because there's other things coming around and being trafficked around the world: arms, children, adults, drugs. And that's what makes the economy still go, and certainly makes the upper levels of the governments still go.
Well, I don't think it's a ludicrous assumption, Rich. I mean, even the official figures on people trafficking and child trafficking is astronomical. And when you look at certain figures for certain countries, obviously some are different from others, but either way, globally, it's pretty eye-watering. That's just the official statistics that they give you. So these people are traveling in something. Do you know what I mean? They're not being teleported. So, it's not a ludicrous assumption that would happen here. Now, your next story, Rich, I think there's probably an underlying thing to look into this as well, just as you have there with that. So this is a story coming out of the United States.
Yeah, this is odd because you covered a story yesterday and I wasn't quite sure if you covered the same story. It's so similar, but it's not the same story. And that makes me go, there's something else to this. Like you've just said, there's no reason to make these sort of ludicrous mistakes and have them reported in the media, the mainstream media, legacy media, if there's not something else going on here, and this is a cover for it. So ICE deports Venezuelan teen despite reportedly knowing he was not a target. You had the other story yesterday. The guy was in one of these gangs and that he should be brought back, and there's no evidence he actually was in these gangs, and they refused to send him back to Venezuela, and the US don't really care. A 19-year-old Venezuelan in New York City reportedly was apprehended by administration immigration authorities and deported to El Salvador, despite agents realizing he was not whom they meant to arrest in a targeted operation. You just go, oh, we've screwed this one up. They don't make these sort of mistakes. They trail these people for months. It's a team of people. This isn't, in my opinion, a mistake in any way, shape or form. That's just ludicrous. They don't make these sort of mistakes. Marswil Gutierrez, whose family opened an asylum case after arriving in the US, was deported from the Bronx to the notorious Secot prison in El Salvador, despite his relatives insisting that he has no gang ties or criminal history, according to Documented, a news room dedicated to telling the stories of immigrants in New York City, apart from Chabad, obviously. The Gutierrez family says it has been left without information or answers. The team was detained alongside 237 other Venezuelans on the 24th of February by US Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. His father, Wilmer Gutierrez, told Document, I feel like my son was kidnapped. Well, he was. Clearly, was kidnapped.
He was.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened, mate. I've spent countless hours searching for him, going from one precinct to another, speaking with numerous people who kept referring me elsewhere. That's called passing the buck. Yet after all this, no one has given me any information or provided a single document about this case. How does the same mistake happen twice and then get reported on? None of this is by accident. Again, call me a conspiracy theorist, something else, as you say. And I was going to bring that up. This is one to watch, is going on here. This is not a mistake. And no. I can't finger on it yet. It's too early in the day to say. There's something else going on here. What that is, you've got an idea?
I've got a theory, Rich.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, if you want to get something through, you need both sides to agree to it. Now, like you said, we covered this story yesterday about the chap being taken out to El Salvador, despite the fact there's no evidence he was ever in a gang, and the fact that there was also a court order from a high court judge saying that he shouldn't be deported. He was anyway. Now, the US won't try and get him back, and El Salvador won't give him back. So he's rotting in a prison despite having a young family. So I made the point that actually this is a human being we're talking about, and the fact that the state has the power to just toss people in the bin like that is pretty dark. Got called lots of names by the Trump fans because that's what happens when you say anything against the Orange Fuhrer. But there you go, like, not bothered. It's fine. Now, so what you've got is you've got the people on the right overwhelmingly that historically, until Trump came to charge, didn't want digital ID, didn't want biometric IDs, and didn't want any of that AI control grid around borders. They didn't want that. Right? They wanted secure borders, but they didn't want any of the dystopian stuff, right? We don't really want that. Now Trump comes in, now it's brilliant all of a sudden. It's funny how that works. So you've got them on side with digital ID in terms of not allowing people into the country, right? So then on the other hand, you're going to have those people on the left. A lot of them on the left support digital ID and stuff like that, but a lot of them don't also, right? So then what about this? So ICE has deported this Venezuelan teenager, sent him to a horror prison. Could they have done that? Could they have made that mistake if there was some form of biometric ID? We couldn't have done it. AI wouldn't have allowed it. Wouldn't have allowed us to have done that, for that mistake to have been made. And the other guy as well, that was sent to El Salvador from New York City, would you have been able to do that if there was some sort of biometric ID that AI could flag and say, oh no, this isn't the person you think it is? No. Well, maybe biometric ID and I don't know, I'm just riffing, but maybe that's a good idea then, isn't it, after all? That's my thought. That's a suspicion, Rich. Again, pop that tinfoil hat on my bonce. The fact that digital ID, and we're coming to another story on that, is absolutely everywhere at the moment, to me would suggest that there's at least a potential that is in some form connected with the pushing of these stories and these so-called mistakes, which blatantly aren't mistakes.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. That's a really good point. It didn't occur to me that it was the digital ID, but that makes total sense, doesn't it? I mean, obviously, it's not a mistake. It's part of a narrative and a story. And once you understand the story, none of this is a mistake. They don't make mistakes. It always blows my mind is that people can go, oh, Mossad, they're so amazing, CIA, you know, they're all of this intelligence agencies, but they still believe that they can make these sort of really stupid mistakes that are clearly done on purpose. It doesn't match up in their mind. It's like they can be two things at once. Yes, humans make mistakes, but these are programs with a lot of people involved with them. There was no mistake in there, and maybe I don't know what's happened to these young kids. Both of them happened in New York, I believe, as well. So that's also something to keep an eye on. But we have the same over here. I mean, we've said this week in What If, we called it Mega is a mini MAGA. Mega, make England great again. It's the same thing. It's the same cult transported, trafficked over here. And we're having the same thing. They're not seeing the blatantly obvious, or they don't want to see it right in front of them, that everything they're promoting is everything they would have stood against 6 or 7 years ago. And deep down, they'll know that. And that's what's ushering this madness in. So this, I agree. If anything, that's probably the most likely one, is that this is going to usher in this digital ID. We can't make mistakes. Well, it's not a mistake, is it? So it depends how you program the AI.
Well, if it was a mistake and it was a genuine mistake, as soon as that mistake was highlighted, you would reverse it. The fact that they're not is creating more of a story, essentially. If you just go, oh, sorry, yeah, we've got the wrong guy, send him home, sorry, do you know what I mean? Send him a couple of $100,000 to apologise, off you go, son. But the fact they're not doing that, they're letting these people rot in these horrendous jails El Salvador, that's intentional as well, because you don't have to do that. You don't have to let them rot there. You can just you can open the door. It's got a key and stuff and everything. The thing is, like you say, they would have opposed, you know, these MAGA fans, they would have opposed this 6 years ago. Mate, they would have opposed it if Harris had won. Because we know it's a long, drawn-out agenda which goes way above puppets like Trump and Harris and Tony Blair, who we're going to come to next. It obviously would have been implemented, probably used a different excuse for why, but it would have been implemented under Harris as well. And had it been implemented, these people that are now cheering it on would have opposed it vehemently. That's the point. That's how they got you to agree to it, by telling you were winning. Moving on to Tony Blair. I'll no doubt get some ear-roll grief for saying that, but it won't stop me saying it. Tony Blair agrees digital IDs and live facial recognition can help to secure our borders, protect public services, and deliver a faster, fairer justice system. Okay, so Tony Blair, the war criminal, the real butcher of Baghdad, has been calling for IDs, digital ID cards, since the beginning, since he was, even before he became prime minister. Now, he became prime minister in 1997, at which point the borders of the United Kingdom were basically just swung open. Have at it, through various ways of incentivizing coming here illegally as well as coming here legally. That was when the mass influx of unvetted migrants came and started coming to the United Kingdom in the crazy numbers. Now, what makes me laugh about this is you've got Tony Blair, who's always wanted digital ID. He then facilitates the mass immigration that he's now using as an excuse for why we need digital ID. Right? It's that perfect problem reaction solution that obviously Dad talks about often. And I look at it and I go, do you know what? This is the equivalent, right, of a double glazing salesman knocking on your door 10 minutes after he's basically smashed every single one of your windows in. Because that's what they do, isn't it? They create the issue and then they go, I think we can do this to solve it. And you go, oh, that sounds great. Yeah. That's the idea. That's why they did it. Now, whether or not people fall for this, I don't know, Rich. The fact that it's Tony Blair pushing it might help people stand up to it, because he is a war criminal and probably one of, if not the most hated men in Britain. Although Keir Starmer is doing his best to compete for that accolade. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Rich, whether actually people are going to stand up to this or not. I sincerely hope so, mate.
I think they would do in terms of Tony Blair, and we see this with the ULEZ stuff, and everybody knows it's creeping in around them. But then you want Elon Musk in and these guys, these technocrat guys, and I think that they'll sell it to the mega lot over here as a positive. They'll find another way of doing it. Again, it's this using something that they've created. These immigrants coming over here and doing this and doing that, and they're just using people and moving people around the chessboard as pawns. And it's sad to see that people are actually falling for it and buying into this AI digital ID. It's absolutely everywhere, and it's pre-crime stuff as well. I mean, I even been investigating this week the idea of cryonics, which is the process of cryogenics is the process, but cryonics is actually freezing and bringing people back to life. And it ties in with Palantir and this digital ID in terms of recording everything you've ever done. And they've actually said that if you brought life, you can still be tried for your crimes. And this goes back to a 1948 sci-fi comic that comes out from the guy who created or came up with the concept of cryonics, which is cryogenics. And the reason why that's out now is because the guy who was part of Future Technologies, also Alcor, which frees people, he's now been indicted. He's 90-odd and got Parkinson's on, and basically being Canada's Jeffrey Epstein. And they said if he dies and gets frozen, they bring him back, he'll be tied for his crimes. Now, this is what this comic book exactly says. It says that basically when you wake up 300 years later, you've got to endure everything you've done to everyone else. So it's still onto others, but weaponizing it. Man, these people believe this stuff. They really do believe this stuff. And they look at these sci-fi things and they try and implement them out, as mad as it sounds. So if you look into the real background story where this technology is actually going to lead, they want to even accuse you of or fail you in lives if you manage to freeze and come back. It's insane, mate. These people are absolute lunatics.
They are. I'm wondering when they're going to defrost Walt Disney. That'll be an interesting one. That's all for this episode of Trending. Rich, it's been great to see your face, mate. I'm actually going to get to see your face in person on Friday night at the Iconic Live in Sutton Coldfield, just outside Birmingham. You can get tickets for that, ladies and gentlemen, if you wanted to. You head over to shop.iconic.com. Also, the show, as always, is brought to you in association with Iconic Coffee, which you can also get from shop.iconic.com. If you use the code TRENDING there, you get 10% off the range. Any profits from that come back in to the company, so me and Richard get to see each other's faces more often, hopefully, going forward. That would be a beautiful thing.
Wonderful thing.
Wonderful expression. Gorgeous face. See you later, mate. Cheers, everyone. Bye.